Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. Welcome to Hunting for Answers, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Hunter, and today we're returning to two cases that left serious questions when they first came to light. One involved a young mother from Houston who disappeared after leaving work in the early morning hours. The other involved a Spelman College instructor who vanished during a day on the water at a Georgia lake. In the time since those cases first came to light, investigators have released important details. In one case, remains have now been identified and a murder charge has been filed. In the other, authorities say they have determined what caused a mysterious death on the water. This is a Hunting for Answers case update. Two stories, Deundrea Ford and Joycelyn Wilson. We begin in Houston, Texas. In September of 2023, 21-year-old Deundrea Ford disappeared under circumstances that quickly drew the attention of investigators. Houston police say Deundrea was last seen in the early morning hours of September 22, 2023. Surveillance video showed her leaving Diva's Bikini Sports Bar and Grill, where she worked, along the East Freeway just after 2:15 a.m. She was last seen getting into a white Ford Transit van with a man inside. That was the last time she was publicly reported seen. For family members, the disappearance was immediately alarming. Deundrea Ford was a young mother. Family members said it was completely out of character for her to stop contacting them. As the days passed without any word from her, concern grew. Investigators began working to piece together her last known movements. But at the time, there were few public answers about what happened after she left work that night. As the investigation continued, another detail emerged. Court records showed that Deundrea had been identified as a witness in a separate Houston murder case. The case involved the May 2023 shooting death of a man named Otis Parker. Reports indicated that Ford was listed as a primary witness in that investigation. However, authorities have not publicly said whether her disappearance was connected to that case. At the time, investigators continued focusing on finding Deundrea and determining what had happened to her. Months passed with few answers. Then, in January 2024, authorities announced a major development. A man had been charged in connection with Deundrea Ford's disappearance. The man was identified as 51-year-old Yolande J. Washington. He was charged with murder. Court proceedings are ongoing. But at that point, Deundrea Ford had still not been found. Months later, another update would bring a partial answer to a question her family had been asking since the day she disappeared. In October 2024, Houston police announced that remains found in Dallas earlier that year had been identified as Deundrea Ford. Reports say investigators in Dallas found human remains along Luna Road on March 15th, 2024. After months of forensic testing, the remains were confirmed to be hers. More than a year after she was last seen, her family finally had an answer about where their loved one had been found. Authorities said Yolan J. Washington was being held in the Dallas County Jail. Investigators said he was expected to be extradited to Harris County to face the murder charge. What began as a missing person investigation is now a homicide case, according to Houston police. The case continues to move through the courts, and for Deundrea Ford's family, the search for answers has shifted into a search for justice. Our next update takes us from Houston to Georgia. In February 2025, the disappearance of a Spelman College instructor on Lake Oconee quickly drew attention across the region. 49-year-old Joycelyn Wilson had spent the day on the water with her fiancé, Gary Jones. The two had gone out on a boat on Lake Oconee. What was supposed to be a day on the lake would soon turn into a search. According to investigators, Joycelyn and Gary were seen at a fishtail marina on February 8, 2025. Later that day, the boat was discovered circling unattended near Wallace Dam. The boat was still running, but no one was on board. Authorities quickly launched a search of the water. The next day, February 9th, searchers found Joycelyn Wilson's body in Lake Oconee. The search for Gary Jones continued for weeks. As investigators worked to understand what had happened, they analyzed phone data and other evidence from that day. Reports indicated that Joycelyn Wilson had taken several photos on her phone while they were out on the water. Investigators said the final photo was taken late that afternoon, shortly before both phones stopped transmitting. An investigator said the exact circumstances of what happened next remained unclear. On March 9, 2025, about a month after the initial disappearance, search crews found the body of Gary Jones in Lake Oconee. With that discovery, the search was over. But the central question remained: what exactly had happened on the water that day? Months later, authorities released the final autopsy findings. The Putnam County Sheriff said the medical examiner determined that both Joycelyn Wilson and Gary Jones died from accidental drowning. Officials say the autopsy report found no evidence of foul play. The findings provided an official explanation in the case that had left many people searching for answers. Joycelyn Wilson was a respected educator at Spelman College. Colleagues and students remembered her as a dedicated instructor who was passionate about her students and her work. Gary Jones, her fiancé, was also mourned by family, friends, and those who knew him. The loss of them both was felt by many who continue to remember them. As we close out this update episode, two stories that once left serious questions now have very different answers. In Houston, a missing person case has become a homicide case, now moving through the courts after the identification of Deundrea Ford's remains. In Georgia, a disappearance on the water was later ruled an accidental drowning by the medical examiner. But in both cases, the loss continues to be felt. Families, friends, students, and communities continue to process the loss of lives taken far too soon. Our thoughts are with the families and loved ones of Deundrea Ford, Joycelyn Wilson, and Gary Jones. As we close out this episode, remember that sharing these stories helps make sure that the people at the center of these stories are not forgotten. For updates and more cases, follow Hunting for Answers. You can also connect with us through our Facebook group and find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Reach out if there's a story you believe deserves attention. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Until next time. Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network. For more podcasts from the Black Effect Podcast Network, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.